right. So let's say, for example, we wanted to solve negative 2/3 a plus 10 equals 2/3 a minus 6. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this really quick. Now, if you notice here, the denominators are the same. So you don't have to worry about figuring out the least common denominator, because your least common denominator is just 3. Straighten that up. So now you just multiply each term by 3. Okay, so that means we have 3 times negative 2/3 a plus 3 times 10 equals 3 times 2/3 times a minus 3 times 6. Okay, and just like before, when the 2's canceled out, these 3's will cancel out. Because it's really just another way of saying 3 times negative 2/3. Clean up that 3 in the denominator a little bit. You can say that's 3 over 1 times negative 2 over 3, which just makes that 6 over 3, which is negative 2. You don't have to go through all that because these 2 cancel out, and you're just left with the negative 2 up there. So it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so you have negative 2a plus 3 times 10, which is 30, equals, same thing here, these 2 cancel each other out. So you have 2a equals, well, not equals, minus 3 times 6, which is 18. Okay, so this time we're just going to add 2a to both sides. Where those 2 cancel each other out. So you have 30 equals 2a plus 2a, which is 4a, minus 18. Add 18 to both sides. Minus 18 plus 18 is 0, so they disappear. 30 plus 18 is 48, equals 4a. Divide both sides by 4. Anything divided by itself is just going to be 1. So you have 12 equals a. All right. So any questions on that one? So you kind of see the pattern of that one? This way you don't have to worry about adding together fractions or anything like that. You can just get rid of them in the first step. Yes?
What if, like, they weren't the same number, though, like on the bottom of the fraction?
Yep, actually we're going to do that one too. Yes?
Why does the first negative 2/3 get parentheses, and then on the second half of the equation, the other one doesn't?
Oh, I just put the parentheses so it includes the negative. Because without parentheses, you might mistake it for minus 2/3. So this way it just shows multiplying. Okay, any other questions on this one? All right. Okay, so we're going to do one more where It's similar to the first one we did, but we're going to do it using this method. Okay, anyone still writing? All right. And then we're going to do a couple where the denominators do not match. Okay, so what you want to solve, negative 1/4 times negative 16b minus 20 equals negative 7b minus 16.
Is that 16?
Yes. Let me kind of clean up that b a little bit. Okay. Now with this one, you could multiply each term by 4, and that would get rid of the 1/4. But the only reason I didn't do it last time is because if you notice, if you have 1/4 times 16, it actually just becomes 4. Or if you have 1/4 times 20, that just becomes 5. So you could just distribute it if you notice that it would make the fraction disappear. If you didn't want to do that, you could always multiply it by the least common denominator. Either way will give you the right answer. It's just about which one you're most comfortable with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so with this one, like I said, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply both sides by the least common denominator instead of distributing. So if we have negative 1/4 times negative 16b minus 20 equals negative 7b minus 16, the least common denominator is equal to 4. So we multiply each term by 4. So if we're going to distribute that, just so we'll have all of our terms together, you have negative 1/4 times negative 16b minus, let's say 1/4, negative 1/4 times 20. Oh, that should be, I actually didn't even need the double parentheses. Could have just left that as minus equals
Minus
negative.
20. Minus 20. Or plus 20.
Yep, minus negative. Yep. Well, it would become plus 20, so you're right. Minus 16, so if you multiply each term by 4, that would just be 4 times negative 1/4 times negative 16b minus 4 times negative 1/4 times 20 equals 4 times negative 7b minus 4 times 16. Okay. So you can see sometimes doing it this method will make it harder than it'll make it easier. With this one, it'll just been easier to distribute. Okay, so the 4 and the numerator and denominator cancel out. So you have negative 1 times negative 16, which is 16b. You have minus negative, which is positive, and these two 4's cancel out. So you have plus 20 equals 4 times negative 7 is negative 28b minus 16 times 4 is 64. Okay. And now you have all your fractions going, you just solve for your b. Okay, so you can add 28 to both sides. Well, 28b. These two cancel out. So you have 44b plus 20 equals negative 64. that up some. Subtract 20 from both sides. So you have 44b equals negative 84. Uh-oh. Let's just go ahead and just divide both sides by 44. Anything divided by itself is just going to be 1. So you have b equals negative 84 over 44. Okay. Which can be simplified. Remember 84, you can make that 2 times 84, 20 times 42. Had a little brain fart there. And 2 times 22, where those two would divide out. So you have negative 42 over 22, which you divide both of those by 2 again. You have negative 2 times 21 over 2 times 11. These 2's cancel out, so you're left with negative 21 over 11. Okay, so if we would have just distributed, we would have had a lot easier way of getting the answer. We got the same answer, but just would have been an easier path. All right. Any questions on this one? Yes.
How come the lowest common denominator is not negative 4, it's just 4? Isn't it a negative?
Oh, you could have used negative 4 if you wanted to. So if you want to multiply each term by negative 4, you could have done that also. But I just normally, I think just out of habit, keep the least common denominators positive.
And it doesn't change the answer?
Nope, not at all. All right. Any other questions on this one? All right. Move that over a little bit. So now we're going to solve. Let's say if we have 1/3 equals 3/5 y plus 3/4 y minus 1/2 y. So now we're looking for the least common denominator. So I'm just going to rewrite that. Y plus 3/4 y minus 1/2 y. So now you have denominators of 3, 5, 4, and 2. All right. So now we have to find the least common denominator. Okay, so we already know the least common denominator for these two would be 4, so we really don't have to find that one. So we have to find the least common denominator of 3, 5, 4, and I'll put 2 just because it's there. All right. So least common denominator of 2 and 4 is 4. So we don't have to worry about those two. So to find the least common denominator of 3, 5, and 4, you have your 3, which is just 1 times 3. Your 5, which you know is just 1 times 5. Your 4, which is just 1 times 4. Your least common denominator of those 3 is 3 times 5 times 4. Because they each only appear once in each of those factors. Okay, so you have 3 times 5 is 15. 15 times 4 is 60. Okay. So now we multiply each of those terms by 60. And if we do it right, the fraction should disappear immediately. Yes.
How come you didn't multiply by 2? Because you had negative 1 over 2 up there?
Oh, you could have, and that would have given you 120. But that wouldn't have been the least common multiple. That would have been a common multiple, but it would have had you with a bigger number. So once we figured out that 2 and 4 had the same least common denominator, that's why we just combined the two. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. All right, so you multiply each term by 60. Okay, so that means we have 60 times 1/3 equals 60 times 3 over 5y plus 60 times 3 over 4y minus 60 times 1/2 y. Okay, so for each one of those, the denominator should disappear. Okay, so we know that 60 divided by 3 is 20. So these two, 3 goes into 3 one time. 3 goes into 60 20 times. So we have 20 here. Equals 5 goes into 5 one time. 5 goes into 60 12 times. So we have 12 times 3, which is 36y. Plus 4 goes into 4 one time. 4 goes into 60 15 times. Okay, so we have 15 times 3, which is 45y. Minus 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 60 30 times. So 30 times 1 is just 30, so minus 30y. Okay. Now, if we didn't do it this way, we'd have to combine all of those y terms together, which would have been a headache in its own. This way, we avoid all of that work. Yes?
Where did you get the 45 from?
Oh, when you cancel out the 4 and the 60, that gave you 15, and you still had a 3 in the numerator. Yep, so you just multiply it by that. All right, any questions on this so far? All right. Okay, so we have 20. We have 36 plus 45. Well, you might as well say 36 minus 30 is 6. 45 plus 6, 51. So we have 51y. If we combine all of those together. Now we just divide both sides by 51. And that gives you anything divided by itself is 1. So y equals 20 over 51. Yes.
How does, when you put the 10 over the negative 60,
Mm-hmm.
how does 2 go into negative 60?
Let me see. Which step are you on? This step?
Right there.
10 over negative 60.
Oh, is
It's a 3.
that not a 10?
Which one?
It's a 3.